Hey model builders, this is Mike with Aristotle's Miniatures. Today I'm going to talk to you guys about the modeling technique for stretching sprue. I see a lot of posts on the Facebook groups and forums about different ways to address rigging, whether it's ships or antennas on aircraft and ships, and there's a lot of great products out there that can do what you need them to. I was drawn to stretch sprue though because one, it's free. If you've got a model kit, you've got sprue. If you need different colors, you're not having to worry about buying different products. You just save the different color plastic from the models you're working on. And then the last piece is, depending on what scale you're working at, or even within the same scale, you can have different thicknesses of rigging and antennas. And stretch sprue offers the ability to get some different shapes and rather diameters, not so much shapes. But that versatility and the fact that it's free was appealing to me. So I learned this technique from Jim Bauman. I'll post the link to his write-up. He did a really good pictorial on model warship for him. So I'll post the link to his write-up. I'd encourage you to check that out, and that'll provide some further clarity. But to add to what he's done, I thought it would be helpful for people to see a video of the whole process and how you can use it to do the different antennas that you may want to put on your aircraft in this case. So I'm going to move this out of the way, but I wanted to have it here just to show all the tools we'll be using. My incense holder with an incense stick, and we'll be using the incense and smoke from that to finish the sprue at the very end. Today we're going to be working on this absolutely ancient F4 Corsair from Revell. I think the mold for this is like 50 years old or something. I'm happy with it, but it's definitely a tired old kit. So I didn't feel too bad about doing a theoretical what-if anti-submarine warfare 2 scheme for Atlantic theater operations during World War II. I'm not sacrificing one of those beautiful AFV kits. So the first thing we need to do is we need to stretch our sprue. And as we move into this, the one caution I will give is don't use Bandai sprue for my Star Wars and Gundam builders out there. That Bandai sprue does not react well to the stretching process. It's just not going to behave like it should, and you'll find yourself getting frustrated. So what I've done is I saved this chunk of white cardboard from a flat rate box here at USPS. I find it beneficial because it's a lot easier to see the sprue on this white cardboard than your standard brown box. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our lighter and our black sprue, and I'm going to light this on fire and let it get nice melted blob at the end. And then we're going to dab it, and you're going to want to let it linger just long enough that you see that dab start to grab onto the cardboard, and then you pull. And as you pull, depending on how fast you pull, that's going to affect the diameter of your sprue. So it takes some practice, but it doesn't take too long to get comfortable with it. So we'll go ahead and stretch this first piece. There we go. And that broke pretty quickly. We'll give that another shot and see if we can get it longer. It's not uncommon to be able to pull. I mean, I got long arms, so I can pull a good 4 or 5 foot length of sprue. And it's got a lot of flexibility and strength to it for what it is, so you can just wrap it around here and get a pretty long-lasting length. So there we go. And that's still going, still going, still going, still going. I think we're at a nice 5 foot length there before it hardened up. So, like I said, we can go ahead and just coil this around the cardboard. And now we've got plenty to use for a later date. And as you can see, there's different thicknesses going on here. So, and even I typically don't get these imperfections, but if you've got any like insulator housings or things like that on the subject you're modeling, you can actually use those imperfections to your favor to help capture some of those. So we've got our sprue. The next thing we're going to do is I've got my millimeters ruler, and we are going to figure out how much we need. Now, one of the beauties of stretch sprue is this does not have to be exact. So you want to give yourself just a little bit extra to give yourself some flexibility. So I think the first one we're going to do is this vertical stab down to the base of that rear antenna mast. So I'm probably going to go for 18 millimeters there. Maybe 19. Just give us a little room, and I want to be able to show you guys how you can tighten that stretch sprue up. So I like the thickness of this section right here, so I think this is what we're going to use. So I'm just going to lay this down on my stainless steel metric ruler here, and I'm going to cut it. I'm going to cut it at this 29 millimeter point, and then at the 10. So I got 18.5, 19 millimeter length of sprue. So the next step that I'm going to do, and it's good practice to just double check and make sure that camera doesn't even want to focus on it. Make sure that length of sprue is going to do what you need it to do. So it's a little on the long side, but that's okay. We can address that. So the next thing I'm going to grab is this contact cement from Revel. And you just need a couple dots of this. I don't put it directly on the model. If you're working something bigger, you can probably get away with it with this fine tip applicator. But I'm just going to put some off to the side. And this is usually good for, depending on how quick you work, 2, maybe 4 contact points. But don't be afraid to get new if you're afraid it's drying too quick. So I am going to first apply it here at the top of that vertical stab, just a little dot. And then we're going to take our antenna, and this contact cement likes to melt just a little dab of that antenna. So we'll let it dry a sec, and actually that's definitely longer than what we need. So in a situation like this, where it's that long, I'm going to see if I can't get away with just trimming a little bit off on the plane. This is one of those times where I wish I had 3 hands. And actually, here's what we're going to do. Still didn't come off, so we'll give that one more try. If it doesn't work, then we'll either cut a new piece or there we go. So I'm gonna give this same little pool of glue another try. I think we're okay. So I'm just going to put a little dab right there at the base of that antenna mast. And then I'm going to use my tweezers to get the tip of that in that little dab of glue. So we've got that length of antenna glue there, and you can see it's got a bow to it. And that's okay. We're going to fix that in just a little bit. So while that dries, I'm going to give it a nice poke just to make sure it's set in there. While that dries, we're going to go ahead and do the next length running between the antenna masts. So we're going to take our metric ruler again, and we're looking about 23 millimeters. So maybe 23.5 is what we'll actually cut. So again, I'm going to start that 10 mark, coming out 23 and about a half-ish. So I took forever on that last section, so I'm going to get myself some fresh glue and make sure it's still behaving the way that we need it to. So I'm gonna try and do both runs at once. That might be ambitious. I'm just gonna put a couple dobs at the top of each antenna. And then I am going to very gently set this antenna across there. And there we have it. So again, we've got that sagging antenna, but that's okay. That's where this last step comes in. So we're going to set our Corsair off to the side. And we're going to bring in our incense. And I'll move it up here just so you can see it. Now, one of the recommendations that Jim Bauman made was make sure you're doing this in a room with no ventilation. If there's a fan on or anything like that, turn it off. You don't want any type of airflow. You're going to be watching, and I'm going to try and pull it into view here, that stream of smoke, and ideally you want it going straight up and down. Now for the video, I won't be holding this over my head, but typically I'm in the office with the vent closed, the door closed, and I'm holding the model over my head so I can see that smoke trail and the model against the white ceiling. It makes it easier to follow. But what's going to happen is we're going to hold the model over this heat source, and that smoke lets you know where that heat is flowing. So that's why it's important to get away from that lack of airflow, is you can see where the heat's going, and you can actually provide very fine control over where you're tightening. So that smoke is going to pass over these these antennas, and it's going to pull them tight. So we'll see how well this shows up over the camera. And you probably will have to play on how close you get to the heat source, but you don't want to rush up close to it. And there it's just starting to affect it. Alright, there we have it. So that rear antenna mast, and I'll hold this white box up for a background. Hopefully we don't light it on fire. And you can see that pulled that tight. So already some of that sag has been pulled out from the residual smoke on that central piece, but we're going to do that now for the center piece as well. So we're just going to hold that over the heat source, and that heat is going to pull that stretch sprue tight. And there we have it. And what I think I'll probably do is clean up. There's that little burr sticking on the front of that. So that Revel contact cement just ever so slightly melts it. So I'll probably go back and just melt the front of that down so you got a nice clean transition. But that's in a nutshell Jim Ballman's technique for applying stretch sprue. Whether it's ship's rigging or antennas or aircraft rigging or antennas. Just because you got 1/144 scale doesn't mean you gotta skimp on some of the details. Thanks for watching the video. I appreciate the support. Feel free to follow along on my builds on Facebook, Aristotle's Miniatures, and then you can check out my my stores on Shapeways, CG Trader. The radial engine featured inside this build is actually my design, and it's available for download on CG Trader for any of the other 1/44th builders wanting some extra detail. But thank you. I hope this was helpful. Have a great day.